You're listening to the Hypnotic Empath, and I'm your host, Robyn Holm. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, a body talk practitioner, and an empowered empath with over 2 decades of experience helping sensitive souls like you reconnect with your power. This podcast is a space for deep healing, subconscious transformation, and real-world support. We'll do some guided hypnotherapy sessions, we'll talk to some incredible guests, and we'll help you learn to release what isn't yours, to protect your energy, and to finally feel safe being you. It's time to move from surviving to thriving. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Hypnotic Empath. My name is Robyn Holm and I am your host. And I am here with Jillian Warren and I am so excited to speak with her today. We actually have a second conversation that you can listen in and check into on Jillian's podcast. Jillian, what is your podcast called?
It's Expand the Conversation with Jillian.
Wonderful. So I'm wondering if you can just begin by telling our listeners who you are and what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on, first of all. And so I'm Jillian. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode. I always feel so honored to be a guest on others' podcasts. And I am an energy healer as well as an epigenetics coach. So a lot of the time I talk about multidimensional coaching when I work with people. And my company name is Five Dimensional Wellness because I really like to go into the dimensions of the human, like our soul, how can we take care of that? Our energetic body, how can we take care of that? Our physical body, which always plays a role, especially, I mean, even for me doing energy work. Like if I'm tired or if I don't have enough electrolytes, like I can feel it and it just sucks the life out of me. It's so funny because when I first got attuned to the energy that I channel, I was like sick for like a week. And it was just so much for my physical body. So I like to connect that in for people. And I'm also a yoga teacher slash meditation coach. So I use different ways just to help people reconnect with themselves because there's so much outside of us that's like, oh, do this thing, do that thing. And everybody has forgotten, not everybody, but a lot of people have forgotten to listen to their inner self and their soul and what they're really telling us what we need.
And so how did you get into all of these fields? There's so many ways that we could go, and I will be asking you many questions, but how did you start on your own healing journey?
Yeah, so honestly, I got into all of them the same way. So it was just kind of a snowball effect, I'll say. So when I was 13, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune condition, and I was on the meds for a while, but as I took some of the meds and as they built in my system, I ended up having really severe allergic reactions. I remember being in high school and taking the medicine I had taken every day for about a year and a half, and I passed out. And when I woke up, I couldn't breathe. My lips were blue, like scariest moment of my life. Even now, like that emotion still comes up for me. And so we went to a different med, and I was keeping all of this a secret from anybody that I knew, except for my parents, right? Because I was so embarrassed that like I was different. I say in air quotes because everyone's different. But I just wanted to be a normal kid. And I had this huge weight I was carrying with me. And, add in just childhood trauma. My dad is an alcoholic, and there was just so much packed into that. And, you know, my mom, love her to death, and she's truly my best friend, but she did her best with what she could. And a lot of that controlling and kind of suppressing some of my emotions, I truly believe, as I found out later in life, played into that diagnosis. And so after trying a different med when I was 18, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I was a vegetarian. I took really well, like good care of myself and was like, I can manage it this way. And I just made that decision. So I made that decision. Fast forward, probably like 2017, 2018. I was hanging out with friends a lot, and I had my son in 2010, so he was about 7, 8, and he was friends with their daughter, and we just drank a lot. We drank a lot. I wasn't eating great, and so even though I was still moving my body, it was just I felt different and I was like, something's wrong. And then the height of COVID came. And so I was scared. I was like, oh no, it's going to affect me because they talk all about, people with compromised immune systems and how much worse it could be and all this stuff. So in that fear, I go back to a neurologist and I'm like, okay, what do I do? I get back on the meds. Same story, different medication, where I go in after it's built up in my system a little bit. I have this severe allergic reaction. My whole body's shaking when I get home. I'm like, something's wrong. I go back to the neurologist and I'm like, hey, this happened. And I do my own research a lot, as most people kind of that want to do something other than traditional medication do. And I was like, I saw if we did half a dose, it would maybe could be easier on my body. And he's like, no, I'll just give you a steroid. And I was like, it's a hard no. So I actually got directed to a integrated neurologist, which she was great. She was very nutrition forward. We looked at what nutrients I was deficient in and all these things, which was great, but I was completely getting ripped off. And so I was paying a subscription just to be able to go to appointments with her. And then I was being charged, or she was still charging my insurance company. So I was still paying again for the appointment. It was a lot. So traditional medicine was failing me. And then this custom blend was failing me. And I was like, I have to do something. So I ended up hiring a health coach. She herself had Hashimoto's and was able to heal that through food. So I start working with her. And then as we were going through things, she was like, have you ever heard of trauma work? And I was like, no, what does that mean? And so she introduced me to actually my mentor, who I learned the Ahai or was attuned to the Ahai from, and some other people that had been attuned under her. So I start working with some of these people, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm feeling so much better. All of these emotions are coming up that I didn't understand. All of this stuff from my childhood is coming up. There were moments that I had just completely blacked out in my mind that I was just like, nope, we're not dealing with that. We're starting to come up. And it really just kind of started that ball for me. And so at that moment, I was like, I want to help people. Like, I know I want to help people. And I didn't know what that looked like. So initially, I went back to school for nutritional sciences. But again, traditional medicine, right, in the US. So I'm learning the same things. And I'm like, this is crap. They're sitting here telling me that our body will process sugar like sugar, period. And I'm like, that's not true. If I have honey versus highly processed sugar, that's not the same in my body. And so allowing myself to be like, okay, we're not doing that route anymore. And the yoga teachers, I've been doing yoga since I was a teenager. So I've always loved it. And it was just an opportunity that came up. So I was like, all right, let's do it. I went to Mexico for 3 weeks and it was glamping basically. And it was amazing. It was in right outside of Los Cabos, and it was just beautiful. And some of the most amazing, like spiritual things came up for me because I had already been doing some of the energy work with other people, and it felt so aligned. And then just adding in little pieces of what I've learned through traditional Chinese medicine or, just holistic medicine. And so kind of incorporating all of that together. And then a friend of mine got certified in epigenetics, and she needed her people to help with the coaching certification. And I was like, sure, you can do mine, you can do my son's. And one of the biggest things I learned was that I needed monounsaturated fats in a high level. And I was like, brain food. Like it literally just set off a light bulb. And I was like, of course I do. And so I incorporated that more. I released 20 pounds super easily. Like I didn't even try. My energy was better. And all of these things just kind of came together. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And yeah,
Were you still a vegetarian at this point?
no. So when I was pregnant with my son, I worked in a restaurant at the time and I would smell meat and I was like, oh my God, I need that. Like I just needed it. And it's so funny because even now, or after he exited my body, I was like, oh, I'm indifferent to it. Like, I can go with meat in a meal, I can do vegetarian meals. Like, I'm kind of either way. Like, it's not like I have to have meat in every meal, but he is a protein guy. And it's interesting because even in his genes, he has 2 out of 3 gene SNPs that turn plant sterol into bad cholesterol. And so, where most people, it's blocking those receptors for the cholesterol to get in your gut, his is doing the opposite. So, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, you have all the protein. But it's funny to me now to think about it because I'm like, oh, yeah, he was inside of my body and he's like, I need it. But then after that, I was like, I'm just going to keep eating meat. I just allowed myself that permission. And even though I have such a deep care for animals, because that's where it started, the vegetarianism, it wasn't even really so much about health. It was just, I love animals so much. And like, I couldn't imagine having a cow and then knowing the cow throughout its life and then being like, all right, I'm going to slaughter it for meat. And that's just who I am as a person. And so allowing myself to just be like, I can love animals and still use them for nutrients and thank them. So I just treat it differently. And even when I eat meat now, like I'll send energy healing to my food just to kind of elevate the vibration of it because a lot of people don't talk about this, but sometimes when animals are slaughtered. You talk about like halal or kosher foods where they're really praising the animal. They're really making sure it's not being killed when it's in fear, because that can change the way the food tastes. It can change the way it affects our body. So even if it's not halal or kosher, sending something like energy healing to it and really setting intention or praying over your food can elevate it so much more so our bodies can do better with it.
And what are monounsaturated fats for our listeners?
So monounsaturated fats are going to be things like olive oil, avocados. You can get them in walnuts. You can get them in peanuts. So it's just a type of fat. Like a lot of people, when they talk high fat diets, they typically go for like coconut oils and things like that. And I tried that before. And what was interesting is the coconut oil makes me feel sick to my stomach. And so I was like, nope, that's not for me. And I never thought to replace it with olive oil. But so we've got saturated fats, monounsaturated fats, unsaturated fats. There's so many out there. So monounsaturated fats, I really focus on olive oil every day. More of a Mediterranean style diet where I'm cooking with olive oils. I'll put olive oil in my coffee in the morning. It gives it a nice nutty flavor if you've never tried it and you want to. 12 out of 10, highly recommend. But that's what it is.
Becca told me about that little trick. So with my genetics, so you're a friend of Becca's. Was she the one that you got your genetics done through?
Yep.
Becca Rose's. Awesome. I'll link to her stuff too in the show notes. And Becca and I did a podcast interview a couple of months ago and it was unbelievable. She's so fabulous. She told me about the olive oil and the coffee thing. So I have the SNPs where I do well with the saturated fat. So I can do the butter and the cream and all that. And if I have too many plant oils, I feel sick to my stomach. I feel toxic. If I have too much chicken, I feel toxic. So I was a vegetarian for 7 years, from very similar to you, from about 16 until about 22. And I, over time, became allergic to all vegetarian protein, all of it. And so I had to start eating meat again around 22, 23. And the first thing I started eating again was beef, and I felt fabulous with that. And I can do a little bit of chicken now, but I'm now on the carnivore diet, and that's been the best thing for me. And my genetics definitely reflect that. And my whole life was like, well, the answer is always more plants. Just eat more plants, more fiber, more plants, more fiber. And the more fiber and the more plants I would eat, the worse I would feel. So for this whole last year now, all I've eaten is meat and dairy. Occasionally I'll have some nuts, I'll have some peanut butter, and my digestion is better than it's ever been in my whole life. So it's really interesting how individual and specific we all are. So with your own diet now, what kind of meat do you eat?
So I don't process saturated fats a ton,
Mhm.
but I do a lot of chicken. I do still do ground beef or meat because I like it. And we look at it where my genetics are one way, and Oren, my son, doesn't do great with saturated fats either, but he really does well with a lot of protein. So for ease sake, we'll do higher protein levels, which is ground beef or meat, or sorry, not just meat, but beef. So kind of allowing that and then finding other ways to still boost his monounsaturated fats because he also does better with those as well. Um, so we really focus on that, but I like to get a good variety of it. I don't just eat beef. I don't just eat chicken. I still like to mix up the variety. And even for me, like I still kind of get too grossed out if it's too carnivorous. Like a carnivore diet to me, like I'm like, oh no, I would absolutely like I would start gagging on my food. And I know this because having gone through a lot of like body changes as I got older after I was pregnant, I was on like a prep diet for a while. And I kid you not, like it was so hard to get through my meals at that point because there wasn't enough variety. My body really likes a good variety of things. So we kind of mix it up. We see what feels good for the week. We try and incorporate different things. That way we can see what happens. I do love elk. I do love buffalo. And anytime I actually get elk or buffalo, I do try and do the ancestral blends where it's got some organ meats in there as well because all of those B vitamins are also really good for me based on my genes. So I try and incorporate those as well where I can.
What made you decide to actually train as an epigenetics coach yourself?
Mm. For me, it was the bigger picture because the energy healing, I love it so much. It was just, I I love science, right? I love the science of things, but I also love the spiritual and the stuff we can't make sense of, right? Like people will call it woo or whatever. But I wanted to have that science piece as well because I find a lot of people get introduced to their spirituality through the science or through the physical symptoms. And whenever people come to me through the epigenetics coaching, it's like, okay, I'm having these physical symptoms. What do I do now? And so we start getting into it. And then it's like, well, now this is happening. What's this mean? And I'm like, well, your intuition's now online, even if it's something that they didn't even realize existed. Or maybe now they're getting signs from their guides and like, why is this happening? Or why is this making me feel this way? So I really like it to kind of ground people in before we go into the spiritual side of things or the intuition side of things because sometimes people do find me through the spiritual and intuition. I host a lot of events here in Houston. That are focused around the moon or different portal days, and I'll do energy healing. And so sometimes people find me that way where they're already familiar with that. But I still go to wellness events and I talk to people more about the epigenetics. And that way it kind of transitions over. And a lot of people don't realize that those two are connected.
Do you get a lot of empaths in your practice?
I do.
And how did
I
you start to
do.
recognize that?
Um, a lot of it's like they'll usually tell me like, oh, well, a doctor told me to do this, but I didn't really feel like that was right for me, but I did it anyway, and I still didn't feel great and all of this stuff. So then it's like I have two pieces of it. It's like not only am I like, that was your intuition talking to you, you should have listened to it. And not as like a punishment, but just as a like, hey, we want to listen to that nudge when it comes up. And then also we have the epigenetics piece when we look at it, and then I have the tangible evidence for them to say, see, you did need more salt. And even though they told you you didn't, like that naturopath was doing their best at what they knew. But when we look at your genes, we're able to see, no, like that's actually something that's supportive for you.
And do you find that a lot of the empaths in your practice have a real propensity for people pleasing?
I would say so. And that's definitely it's so interesting because the more people that I work with, the more I see myself in them in different layers of my own journey. Because it's like a doctor tells us something, or we hear something from a friend, and they're like, oh, you should try this. And it's like, okay, I'll try it. And then you try it, and it's like, that doesn't feel good for me, but they're still kind of holding on to it because there's that emotional attachment of like, I want them to be proud, or I want them to be happy with me because I took their advice.
Or I should because they're a doctor and I'm not.
Absolutely.
Hmm. And so when somebody is feeling that people pleasing feeling within them, what advice would you give them?
Hmm. I would remove the other person from the situation and really Find a meditation. I tell my clients take, 3 or 4 really big, deep belly breaths where you're inhaling in through your nose, filling up your lower belly, maybe even creating a little Buddha belly for yourself, and then exhaling out of your mouth and really activating your vagus nerve. That way, we're not panicking, right? We don't want our nervous system to be panicking because we're not pleasing someone, but it brings the attention back to ourselves. It brings our attention back to ourselves and asking our body, like, why do I want to please them? Why is this something that I feel like I need to do? And if it's something that you feel like you should do, I tell people, like, absolutely just take it off the table. That's not something that you're gonna do. We're just gonna table it. If it's something that you're curious about, absolutely go for it. But really getting clear on the reason why you're doing something. And some people that are people pleasers, they don't even realize they're trying to please someone in that moment. And that's why it's like, nope, let's bring it back to yourself and connect with yourself and then see why you want to do something.
Mhm. And how does the breath affect the vagus nerve, just for the listeners, and perhaps even what is the vagus nerve?
Yeah, so the vagus nerve is the largest nerve in your body. And when your vagus nerve is stimulated, it helps your nervous system go from fight or flight into rest and digest. So when we're panicking, even if it's a little bit of anxiety or stress, a lot of the times we want to make sure we're in rest and digest before we make like any serious decisions because our body thinks that we're being chased by a tiger, right? When in reality, it's just like someone emailed us and it made us feel a type of way. But our physical body doesn't understand that. So when our body's in fight or flight, all of our blood is not going to our brain. It stopped going to our digestive system. It's going to your muscles. It's going to your heart. It's really making sure that you're able to fight or run away from something. Or a lot of people, and if you're like me, then you freeze and you just don't do anything. So it's hard to like function in that moment. So your vagus nerve can really, it's like the switch from going from fight or flight into rest and digest. And so when it's stimulated, so those big deep breaths where you're inhaling in through your nose, exhaling out of your mouth. I even tell people like if they want to hum, if you want to make a sound as you're exhaling, that's going to stimulate that vagus nerve and kind of tickle it. And so it's like, oh, all right, we can calm down now. We can calm down now. And so the more you do that and the more you're familiar with it, your body's able to shift over quickly. And then you're like, okay, we're going to go ahead and rest. We're going to take a minute and connect with our body. And that way you don't feel like you're being chased by a tiger subconsciously or physically. And you can actually make a decision that feels good for you.
Mhm. I'd also heard another great way to stimulate the vagus nerve is through gargling. Have you heard this?
Yeah.
So gargling, coughing, can do that too. In body talk, we often tap over the chest bone, and that will help to signal rest and digest to the body through the vagus nerve. I love the humming one. That is a great one. I often do that when I'm driving. I'll put a song on and I'll hum. Singing actually activates the vagus nerve as well. And when we say activate, what we're doing is we're flipping the switch. So we want to flip out of fight or flight into rest and digest. And that's a couple of the ways that you can do that, which is really nice, especially if you are stuck in traffic or late trying to get somewhere quickly. The humming and the tapping and the coughing, those are all great. Gargling's a little bit tougher if you're driving. I don't suggest that.
I love to sing. Like singing is my thing. So I definitely have just started singing to myself sometimes. And this is something I've gotten more comfortable with, but I help a friend of mine that owns a race timing company. So sometimes I'm setting these courses for a 10K, 5K marathon, and I'm like, I don't want them to get lost. But ultimately, like, I can't force someone to read the sign. I can't control their experience at the end of the day. All I can do is my best. And so I found myself one day on a golf cart and I'm just riding along and I'm like, I'm doing my best. I can't do anything else. And like it lifts my mood because I'm just like laughing at myself, but also I know it's activating my vagus nerve. So I'm not like panicking as I'm setting this course. I'm just doing my best.
I do this with my kids. So I have two kids. They're both Leos. They both like to be the center of attention at all times. They're 4 years apart, huge personalities. They're amazing. If you ever get to meet them, they're phenomenal, phenomenal human beings. and they have very strong energy. So if we are all together, the three of us are all together, I always say like the strongest energy wins. And it's usually one of my kids who has the strongest energy. So I have to really build up my own energy. And one of the ways that I do that sometimes is, especially if they're both having meltdowns at the same time, is I will sing whatever it is that I'm saying to them, just exactly like you just did, you were saying on the golf cart. And that either really pisses them off or they think it's funny and they'll laugh. But either way, I am regulated because I can very quickly go to the yelling place. When you talk about fight or flight, I definitely go into fight. And that for me is yelling. So I'll want to yell like, that's enough and stop it or whatever it might be. And I find if I can remember to sing it instead, first of all, like you said, you feel ridiculous and you bring a little bit of humor, which can be fun. You're kind of communicating with them on a kid level that way too, and it can really help. So I love that tip.
Yeah, it's great. And it's so funny now that you mention your kids. It's like I've been singing to my son forever. And it would be in moments like after he'd be getting out of the bath when it's cold and he's a little baby and he doesn't understand. And I'm like, we're singing, we're putting your pajamas on. And he would calm down and I would calm down. And so I've been doing this naturally. So it comes back to that intuition where I've just done it forever and it just makes sense to me now.
Well, we've all done it forever. I mean, singing to your baby is one of the most primal things, right? We've all, I think, done that. Interestingly, my son, my oldest child, loves when I sing to him, and my daughter always hated it. And so I stopped singing really when she was little because she'd get really irritated with me if I tried to sing. Oh, she's funny. They have such, like they come into the world the way that they are. Like they are fully developed beings when they come in. Wow. Yeah. How old is your son now?
He's 15. He'll be
Oh, he's
16 in February.
That's a whole new world. Is he driving?
Not yet. We're about to get his permit. He's been doing his driver's ed stuff, so it's like a whole lesson. And it's so funny because he still loves to hear me sing. Like through his entire childhood, he's just loved it. I'm like, okay.
My son does too. We were just talking about this the other day. And so then now my daughter's like, oh, maybe I'm missing out on something here. But it still irritates her. And if we put on Frozen, she loves the Frozen soundtrack. And if I deign to sing along, she'll just kind of look at me and cover my hand with her hand and say, can you not sing, please, mommy? Okay. Oh my goodness, they're funny. So, what is your favorite way, besides the singing and all that, to decompress, to reset your energy? What is your favorite way to take care of yourself?
Hmm. I have a couple favorites, if that's okay.
Please.
I would definitely say being outside. I always joke, I'm like a lizard. I love being in the sun. It's something I've done my entire life intuitively, and with the autoimmune diagnosis, it made sense because it's usually a vitamin D deficiency, and I tend to be deficient. So the sun is like my best friend, and I love it so much. So just sitting outside or being in nature, when it's warm, preferably, that's definitely one. Another one would be to send myself energy healing or meditate. I've learned to love to connect with myself so much more. Like I said, growing up, I felt like there was so much wrong with me. And I just wanted to be loved. That's really ultimately what it was. And I never realized that it was mostly from myself. I wanted myself to accept me. So as I got further on this journey, I realized how much I liked being by myself and just in my own energy. So, meditation, sending myself energy healing is definitely a great way. Singing is another way for me to just decompress. If I'm frustrated, letting the day go, I'll turn my favorite albums on and I will just sing loud and proud and let it out. I've got this one song that I've been listening to. If anyone's going through a hard time, it's very emo kid of me, but it's Jimmy Eat World, The Middle. It's the lyrics didn't really click for me until recently actually. But the chorus is it just takes some time, little girl, you're in the middle of the ride. Like, and it made so much sense and it feels so relevant for me right now that I'm just like, okay, like you're right. I can't see the end of it. So I would say those are my three favorite ways to kind of just like decompress and reconnect with myself.
And how do you protect your energy as you're an empath yourself, you've told me?
Yes, absolutely.
So, how do you ensure that you're not picking up on the energy of your clients?
So I do a couple of things. Daily, I have my morning ritual where I set up my energetic bubble. And I even tell my clients to do this if I feel like they, or in an energy healing session, if I'm seeing a lot of energies from other people that they're carrying, you just imagine your bubble around you. Mine tends to be a blue-green color. And so just imagining your bubble, setting the intention that the only energy that can come in is of the highest light, love, truth, and compassion. And even then, sometimes like going somewhere, I'll feel other people's energy because it's hard to like consciously think about this all the time, right? Which the intention itself sets it up. But sometimes with partnerships, it's like you, if they're frustrated and they get home, like, especially if you're a people pleaser, it's like, oh, how can I fix this? People you live with, your kids, things like that, like they're in your bubble. And so it's like, okay, well, how can I come back to myself? And so I've started doing this thing where I'm like, okay, that's theirs. And I'll send it back because I'll take note of how I'm feeling when I'm by myself. And then I'll pull my energy back in. And I have this mantra right now that I'm working with, and it's that I can't control their experience, that it's okay for them to have their experience and I'm having mine. And they don't have to be exactly the same all the time because with empaths, or for myself, I know that for me, I found myself people pleasing or manipulating in ways that was changing the other person's emotion so I wouldn't have to feel it instead of noticing that's not mine and sending it back to them. So taking that time to intentionally say, this isn't mine, I'm sending it back to them. And it's okay for me to be in a good mood if someone's upset. Like, I'm not saying to dance and sing around them, but like, you don't have to be in the same mood or the same vibration as someone just because they're near you.
That is so huge because as empaths, not only can we discern that they're thinking or feeling a certain way, but it's also that we feel the responsibility to make it better. We feel that responsibility that everybody in the room is comfortable. So it's that feeling of needing to do that. So I also do the bubble of protection, and it was introduced to me by my hypnotherapist, and that changed everything for me because she plugged it straight into my subconscious through hypnosis, which is where we hold all of our programs. And now I do that for every one of my clients. And I'll link to a podcast episode I have that has the bubble of protection where people can listen to it and kind of, quote unquote, put it in for themselves. And then I always anchor it in with thumb and finger together because in certain situations, if I know that I'm going to need to be reminded of my bubble, because once it's there, it's there. You don't have to put it in again. But sometimes it's nice for your conscious mind to remember that it's there. So I'll put my thumb and finger together. And I always lovingly call it bubbling up if I'm going into a certain situation where I know my bubble might be more permeable with certain people as opposed to others or certain situations. So when it's anchored in hypnotherapy, now this movement of my thumb and finger together is linked with the new neural pathway of having a bubble of protection. So every time I do it, I reinforce that pathway. And every time I do it, I choose that neural pathway. And the more we choose it, the bigger and stronger it gets. So that's really effective. What does the blue green mean to you?
Ooh, it's it's an interesting question. It reminds me of water and the earth. And it's so interesting because as I've learned more about who I truly am, that I'm very grounding, like, especially to my clients and outwardly. For myself, I have to remind myself to pull it in and ground because a lot of the times with my emotions, they feel like a wave is coming through. And it's so funny because it makes so much sense to me now. I had this experience when I was in my yoga teacher training where we did um, a vision quest for one night. So we left the campus at 9 p.m., hiked to a beach that was a couple miles away. I didn't even have a tent, like literally just had an umbrella and a sleeping bag. And so I was fasting this whole time and I was out there until like 2 p.m. the next day. So by myself, nobody was with me. And they're just like, spend time by yourself. And so I get into the water at one point because I'm on the beach and I'm getting so frustrated because I just want to relax. I just want to relax and be calm. And the waves were just not that day. And I had this huge download that was like, you can't force the water to do anything. Like you can be relaxed while the waves are moving around you. And allowing myself to find that in moments, especially being an empath where there's other emotions around me and I'm like, okay, but that doesn't control me. Or allowing myself to go through a wave of emotion. And especially with human design, I know we were talking about that yesterday. I am an emotional authority. So I'm constantly riding the waves of how I'm feeling. And I just have to wait until I'm in a solid emotion of, no, this feels really good for me. So it's so funny how these things come up. So it's that water, but also that earth where externally, my clients, my friends, my people that are close to me, they're always like, you're so grounded. You're so grounded. I feel so calm. I feel so safe around you. And I'm like, I feel like a freaking spaz. Like, what do you mean? And I think that's really what it represents to me the most. And they've just become my favorite colors, if I'm being honest.
Totally. I often ask people what color their bubble is when it presents to them. And when I think blue green bubble, I think throat chakra, heart chakra. So you're going to feel the most protected in your bubble when you're speaking from your heart.
Mm,
And that's your emotions
yep,
when you embrace them, right?
absolutely. And it's so true. There's so much, in human design, there's so many layers of it, right, that you can go into. So when we look at the gates, I didn't do the research myself. A friend of mine learned about it and she was like, "What's yours? What's this? What's this?" And a lot of mine were like the alchemist, the voice alchemist, and all of this stuff with my voice. A very good friend of mine, she's always like, "There's something about your voice. Like there's so much power in it." The singing for me, being able to alchemize those emotions through song, through expression. And so that's really that piece of speaking from the heart, leading from the heart. And anytime I'm reacting or anytime I'm doing something that's not coming from my heart, I definitely feel it. I feel so disconnected and I feel so much more emotional after because I'm like, but that's not me.
Isn't that beautiful? And even you use your voice in podcasting.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yep, I definitely have always been called to use my voice as well. And when I was younger, I was a singer in a band. I'm not like the lead singer. My sister is phenomenal and like I like to sing backup. But then I taught group fitness and I trained, that was all voice. And then now I'm a hypnotherapist and my voice is my instrument. So I relate to that and it's really cool the different ways that we can use our voice and express ourselves and hold space for people. So that's really beautiful. So how can people work with you?
So they can work with me through epigenetics, which is the genetic blueprint. I already have an energy healing session that I call a DNA activation session with each blueprint that you get. So when you sign up for the genetic blueprint, you're not only getting your blueprint, but you're also getting 2 weeks of coaching after we do your blueprint call, as well as an energy healing session where we're really going to look at, okay, this is your goal. Is there any energetic piece that we need to look at, that we need to shift for you to really get to where your goal is? Because sometimes people could be doing everything right on paper, but adding in the energetic piece that people don't think about or forget about, we make sure to include that as well. So that's one way. I also do energy healing sessions one on one, either online or in person in Houston. And I also offer a spiritual mentorship, which is 8 weeks long. And it basically is custom to where you're at because I don't want someone to come in and say, oh, well, I already know about energetics. I already know this and this. I want to meet you where you're at, and that way we can really hone in on your skills. Whether you've started to have your intuition come online and you just need to learn more. Maybe you've never tried talking to your spirit guides, but you know you're intuitive. So, really learning how to communicate with the universe and yourself and bringing that in. Um, and yeah, I'm working on combining the two. So in 2026, I will be doing a group program that's going to include the genetic blueprints and the spiritual mentorship, where we'll be doing energy healing regularly, as well as incorporating the science and very grounded piece of the genetic blueprints.
That sounds amazing. Do you have a website that people can visit?
I do. It's fivedimensionalwellness.com. Five is spelled out, so FIVE, dimensionalwellness.com.
And I'll link that in the show notes. Jillian, thank you so much for being here and for all those tips for people. I think that they're going to get a lot out of listening to this episode and a lot of things that they can do right away to start feeling better and protect their energy. And it's been wonderful talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
Great. We'll talk again soon.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining me today on the Hypnotic Empath. If this episode resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd follow the show, leave a 5-star review, or share with somebody who needs this kind of support. You can find more resources, hypnotherapy audios, and ways to work with me at robynholm.com. And don't forget, your sensitivity is not a weakness, it's a gift. Stay rooted in your power, and I'll see you next time.